I want to talk to you guys about a really slick feature that all Yamaha Aventage AV receivers have that many of their competitors do not. And it's called the Web Editor Setup or Web Editor app. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasalo with Audioholics, and I want to give you guys a tour of a really powerful feature that all Yamaha Aventage receivers have. They've actually done an update to it on the latest 2021 models, and I'm tickled pink over this because I really like the power of this. The main advantage of having a tool like this is you could fully configure the receiver if it's not in the same room as your other equipment, as your speakers and your display. You could do it all through IP control. So if you have a network created and you have your Yamaha receiver plugged in through Ethernet, which is what I recommend instead of wireless, because Ethernet is way more reliable, and you go on the network and you type in the IP address /setup, you can access every configuration option till your heart's content on this AV receiver. I want to give you guys a tour of that because they've done a major graphic update to it, and it looks much more modern. Same power as it was before, but it's just very cool, very slick. And I'm going to share my screen and show you guys exactly what is going on here because it's just really cool. I can't stress to you how cool this is. So here we are. We got to go into a browser, and I typed in the IP address that I got off the receiver. As you can see behind me, I've got the receiver on my test bench. So this is the general setup area right here, the general tab that I'm on. And you see you have all your control. Now, I'm testing the Yamaha RX-A 6A, which is the second of the top of the line model, right below the flagship, the RX-A 8A. This thing is really cool. It's got, a main zone that does 9 channels of amplification, 11 channels of processing, but you also have 3 other zones of audio. Really awesome. A lot of receivers only give you maybe 1 or 2 zones. Yamaha's actually putting out 4 zones on this product. Pretty incredible. So in your general setup tab here, you have your power control. For sleep timers, you could set your volume control if you want to mute your stuff, input selection, scene selection, so you could have different configurations for whatever scene you want to create. You could put in straight mode. You could select your DSP program. Now, in most cases, I recommend just using the native 2-channel for 2-channel music or surround decode for Dolby Atmos upmix. And in some cases, all channel stereo can work if you properly balance the channels. You don't want to have equal levels for all channel stereo, otherwise it just doesn't sound good. Probably do a separate video on that and how you guys can get the best out of all channel stereo. And of course, if you want your system to sound like a German bathtub, you can go and select one of these DSP modes. Not a huge fan of the DSP modes, quite frankly, but it's there if you like it. And then if you do your YPOW calibration, you have all your different settings here, your YPOW volume, your dialogue level, dialogue lift. The surround AI is a cool feature to enhance the surround effect. And I've actually talked about this when I did the CXA 5200 review. If you guys want to take a look at that on our YouTube channel, I'll link it down below. And then if you want to be a purist and you want to bypass all DSP, all, base management, everything, you go to Pure Direct and you get the exact signal that's coming in, whether it's digital or analog. Then you got your different adaptive DRC and DTS dialogue control, all that cool stuff. And by the way, I don't know, have you guys had any DTS software where you can actually take advantage of this? I haven't tested that yet, but I'm going to kind of take a look and see what that's all about. And then you got your tone controls. If you still use tone controls, you have the ability here. I talked about the extra bass feature in the last video. The only time I recommend using the extra bass feature is when your main speakers are set large and you want to copy that bass over to the subwoofer for 2-channel. I do not recommend extra bass for speakers that are set small. It just does some weird stuff that I'm not too thrilled about. You can watch our video on that. And then if you want to make those other zones mono, that's really a good thing. If you're just setting up distributed audio and you just want to put background music, you probably want that in mono. That's cool. And you've got high res mode. I'm not really sure what that is all about. I got to look at that. So that's in your general tab. You got your network tab here, which shows you your IP address. And if you want to do a manual IP address as opposed to having one assigned, you could do all that kind of control there. Bluetooth audio. It's kind of cool if you want to do Bluetooth. You got that ability. And here's your sound settings. I always recommend leaving your dynamic range to maximum unless you're trying to do low-level listening and you don't want to have large outputs of volume during action scenes. If someone's sleeping, then you could go in here and select standard or minimum or auto. If you care about having the max dynamic range and best sound and you don't care about pissing off your neighbors or someone sleeping, then leave it on maximum. I already talked about the adaptive level DSP, the virtual presence speaker. These are just DSP modes that simulate extra speakers that you don't have. And they have a virtual surround back channel speaker. I have not tried that yet, but I will when I do the actual review. Now, what's missing, which is kind of concerning to me, is there's no center spread feature for the Dolby Upmix. And what I found from prior experience with other receivers is when they offer the DSP virtualization of speakers, they tend to not also offer the center spread feature. It's something with Adobe licensing. I bitched about that when Sound United did that with the Marantz and Denon receivers, and they went back and they did a firmware update and they brought it back. So I'm going to be bitching now for Yamaha to bring it back because I really do believe center spread is an incredibly powerful feature to have if you're upmixing music in 2-channel and you want to preserve the stereo imaging without dumping everything to the center channel. Center spread on is the feature you want for that. And then when you're watching 2-channel videos or whatever, you turn the center spread feature off. I'm going to try to get Yamaha to bring that back in a firmware update. And if you guys are interested in the center spread, you want it on Yamaha AVENTAGE receiver, please put the comments down below to show the support, because I can't do this without you guys. I could complain as much as I want, but until the actual buyers of these products are in agreement and they voice their concerns in the comments below, it's hard to move the needle. So I really appreciate your support and helping me out. You guys have done so much in the past with the Dolby at licensing for center spread, for the cross mixing, and also truth and power, that we could get receiver companies to continue to give us 2-channel full bandwidth ratings, and then let us give us an idea of what these amplifiers do with multiple channels driven, which, by the way, I'll be testing this and I'll be releasing my test report after I work out some things that I'm discussing with Yamaha on some of the distortion issues that I found. Hopefully we could get that resolved soon so I could do my full test report. But I just wanted to show you some of these other settings here. This is where you do all your lip sync adjustments. They give you a lot of options here. It's pretty incredible. I mean, it's just, this receiver has a lot of well thought out features, and it's all accessible through the web. So you don't have to worry about an on-screen display, or you don't have to worry about if the receiver's in another room. You could do all this through the network. If you have a laptop or an iPad or something like that, and you just know the IP address and you hit /setup, it's all there for you. You got your lip sync delay. You can enable it for each input, change that around. That's really cool. The ultra low jitter PLL mode, that's just different DAC settings that they offer. I mean, it leaves a default on level 1. I don't see a huge difference in any of this stuff. I'll be looking at some measurements, through square waves and stuff, and I'll look at the filter response to see if there really is much of a difference. But that goes beyond the purpose of this video. And then you have your, your different audio routing. If you want your audio in for HDMI or you want to do it for a different audio, you can kind of select that here. You got input trims. That's a cool feature. So like if you switch from one HDMI to another and the source level is louder on the other one, and you don't want to be shocked when you switch levels, you can go and knock that down. So if like your HDMI 3 is a cable box and it tends to be louder than your streaming device, you could go and knock it down a couple of dB, or boost it if it needs to be boosted. So that's really a great feature to have as well. And then this is an important feature, the max volume. I like to always set this a little bit below what the max receiver capability is, just because you never know. If I've had so many times where I've had people come over the house and they try to turn on the system and they can't get sound. So what's the natural reaction to people that don't really know a lot about audio? They keep pumping up the volume. I had my sister-in-law do that in one case when I had a flagship Yamaha receiver plugged into my RBH speaker system, and she cranked the volume to max. And then when she finally figured out how to get sound, through a CD or whatever, the whole system just blasted at unbelievably loud SPL levels until the receiver shut off. Luckily, it was a Yamaha receiver plugged into my speakers that had some protection built in for such scenarios. Because if they had my Aragon system plugged in at the time, I would have probably had blown speakers. So again, this is a great feature to have to maybe set a little limits on the receiver so it can only get so loud in those situations. And then the initial volume is another great feature. I hate it when you turn a receiver on and you were probably partying the night before and you were blasting music or you were watching a movie at reference level. Then you go to turn it on the next day and you just want to watch TV and you get blown off the chair when you turn it on because it was set at the last volume. Initial volume is a great feature to have. I set it pretty low, so like maybe minus 30 or something like that. And then you could just go up on your remote to whatever taste you want at the time. Good feature to have. And then you just have volume memory. I mean, I just can't believe all the configuration options. It's crazy. I don't want to make this video an hour long, but suffice it to say, there's some really cool stuff here. I'm not really sure what the DTS mode 1 or mode 2 is. I'll have to consult the manual on that. So that's for your sound. And then for your tuner, which if anybody uses, you can go and program your tuner channels. I'm not even going to go over that. I don't who uses a tuner anymore, to be honest with you. It's nice that it's there, I guess. And then you got your DSP. So if you want to configure your DSP modes and you want to do, if you want to select your inputs to whatever DSP mode you want it to go on, you could do that as well. You have all your parameters here. So if, you know, some of these DSP modes, I shouldn't bag on Yamaha too much. I do like the jazz setting. Sometimes when I'm listening to like Pat Metheny or something and it's meant to be like a live performance or like in a jazz cellar, I'll go and I'll use one of the jazz DSP modes. And I'll, excuse me, I'll cut down the levels a little bit. Like say the Village Vanguard, it tends to be a little too echoey. So you could change that by changing the room size. You know, you make the room size smaller by decreasing the level. You could also reset it to back to where it was. And you could adjust the effectiveness of the DSP level by attenuating or increasing it. There's liveliness. So there is some merit to some of this. I'm not going to bag on Yamaha entirely. You can get good results out of this if you want to go for that. And if you're using height channels, especially, I think that could really open things up for you. So play around with that. You know what? Give me some comments down below. What's your most common used DSP mode in your Yamaha receiver if you are a Yamaha owner? For movies, I always, when I used it, and this is back when they had the front effects channels before we had Atmos, I used Spectacle. I really did like that one. I thought that was a good sounding DSP mode. It really opened up and made the room sound larger than it was. And Adventure. I think Adventure and Spectacle were my two kind of go-to DSP modes when I ever wanted to turn those on. So you have all that, the power of your fingertips here on your web editor app. It's pretty awesome. This is where you make your scenes. As I was telling you before, if whatever configuration you want to have, you can call it into a scene, and then you can instantly access that by going to scene 1 or scene 2 and have all your different DSP modes set and your volume level set, whether you have YPAL on or not. I mean, you got all of that ability at your fingertips. Then you got your zone setups here. As I said, it says zone 2, 3, and 4. And it's cool you can actually run HDMI to these zones. I mean, that's pretty impressive. A lot of receivers don't have that capability. You got your tone controls here for the first zone 2 and zone 3s. So yeah, it's just pretty incredible configurability here. You could turn this receiver into a full home audio solution and basically control it all through the web or even Yamaha's phone app, and do a lot of the stuff on the phone app as well. So this could be your one box solution for whole home audio, just because you have all this power at your fingertips and you have all these different zones and all the different HDMI flexibility and the routing and everything. It's pretty incredible time to own an AV receiver that, you know, these days. So here you have your HDMI control, whether you want it to be on standby, which is standby mode is awesome. So you don't have to have the receiver on. You still get a picture through your TV if you want to use the TV speakers for whatever reason. Pretty cool that you have that ability. Again, you're routing for your HDMI, what versions. I mean, you could get lost in all these different settings. Really quite incredible. And there's even presets if you want to do any type of advanced picture tuning, which is great because if you're only using one input on your TV, but you're using your Yamaha receiver to do all your source control, you might have to change the calibration from one source to the other. So here you have the ability to adjust black level, you know, brightness, saturation. You could do some post-processing if you really want. Got, wow, 6 presets. That's incredible. And that's something you could probably put into a scene. So you could create scenes for whatever, or just do it into whatever input. You have control over whatever input you want to put it in. Like I said, this thing is just infinitely configurable. So the most important thing I want to show you is the speaker setup. And this is what's really powerful, is the fact that you have 2 different patterns of speaker layouts if you want. Your power amp assign here, you know, how you want to route the channels through the amplifier outputs. You could do your bi-amp, you could do basic, you could do external front to zone, you can do bi-amp if you want. I mean, there's just so many different options here, which is awesome. And how you assign those extra speakers if you want to go to another zone, if you want to use them as height channels. Very cool. Then here's your bass management, so you can have large or small. Now the crossover, I just want to make sure you guys understand this. Even if you set your main speakers large, the crossover from the front channels is what determines what the crossover will be for your subwoofer when you're listening to 2-channel music. So if, let's say you set the speaker small and you set it to 80 hertz, then your front speakers are going to have a high pass at 80, and then the bass from 80 hertz and below is going to go to your subwoofer. When you set it large, your speakers will play full range, but now your crossover on your sub will be what this setting is, 80 hertz or 100 hertz, whatever you want to set it. So just keep that in mind. They don't have a separate setting for the sub for 2-channel. It's really dependent on the crossover for your main channels. And all of that is configurable here. You can use 1 or 2 subwoofers. Now, here's a feature that I'm glad Yamaha kept that Sound United got away with. They did away with it. Sound United, Denon and Marantz receivers only give you a monaural sum of the 2 subwoofers. The Yamaha actually gives you a left-right, stereo left-right, which I really like that option, because if you're running 2-channel stereo and you're using subwoofers that are in generally close proximity to your main speakers and you want to maintain stereo bass, you could cross those subwoofers over a little bit higher. Let's say you put those subs behind the main speakers so they're up against the wall, so you don't have to worry about SBIR effects by having bass sources off the wall. You might want to put 1 sub behind each main speaker. Now you can run them as stereo left-right, raise the crossover point to say 100 hertz or 150 hertz. You'll get stereo bass. You can't do that in a mono split with most other receivers. They only give you mono. You can't do stereo bass. The Yamaha allows you to do stereo bass, and at the same time, it does the LFE and it sums it to each of the subs in mono, which is great. This is exactly what you want. So you have the option to do mono or left and right. I never recommend front and rear. I think that's a stupid feature because it only sends LFE to one of those subs. And I think it was maybe the front sub. I can't remember 100%. I know I wrote about this in older receivers, but historically front or rear means LFE will only go to one of those subs. Don't use that setting. It's dumb. They should do away with that setting. And then of course you have your distance settings here, and you could do in 0.2 of a foot increment, which is plenty of adjustability. And you do that for all your channels. Now, of course, you might use YPow just to have it automatically set your levels and delays. You're welcome to do that, but you could go and tune it, fine tune it here to your liking. And then here's your channel trims for each of the channels within 0.5 dB increments. It shows all the different speakers here, your subwoofers. Now here's the fun stuff, the PEQ. As you guys saw in my YouTube short, I showed you how there's a graphic illustration of the PEQ through the Yamaha OSD or the GUI when you hit that speaker setup using the remote control and looking at it through your display. you can go in and also do it through the web editor app. And this is really useful because if you're sitting in your theater room and you're using REW to make speaker measurements, you find your problem areas. Let's say, let me go in here and show you. First, you select manual. So let's say you have a problem at 25 hertz. Now, normally PEQ means you could adjust the center frequency to any frequency you want. Yamaha doesn't give you that fine of a control. They give you a pre-select list of frequencies that you have to select the closest to the problem that you find. And this is actually much better than the last generation. It was like last generation, I think, was like 1/3 octave increments. This is much finer detail. So let's just say you have a problem. You measure with REW, you have your main speakers and your subs playing at the listening area, and you see a big bump at 31 hertz. And it's, 10 hertz wide. Well, you select the center frequency for 31 hertz, and you go and adjust the Q. And as I said, it was 10 hertz wide. It's basically F2 minus F1. So that would give you a Q of about 3. So I'm just going to say 3.175. And let's say the bump is 6 dB. Now you go and subtract 6 dB. Now I'm doing this for the left channel. I probably, in most likelihood, you're going to be doing this for the subwoofer channel. The nice thing about the Yamaha receiver is you got 7 bands per channel. So you could really go and fine tune the bass for each of the channels, or you could do them as a sum. You go in and you figure out where the problems are, and you go and you cut the bass at those frequencies. So this is very powerful stuff here. I wish all receiver companies would give you PEQ adjustability. Hint, hint, Sound United. You guys are still using a GEQ, which is ridiculous. Get rid of the GEQ and get us a PEQ like Yamaha's doing here. This is just awesomeness. And, I'm not a huge fan of full range correction, but I am totally fine with, shelving filters. So if you want to go and raise the treble on all your speakers, let's say you get your bass all calibrated, the mids are fine, but you just want a little more sparkle, you can go and select at what frequency you want to go and boost treble. Let's say you want to boost it at 12 kilohertz. You basically just set it at a very low Q, at like 0.5 dB. And this will add a very nice shelving filter above 12 kilohertz all the way to 20 kilohertz. It'll give you a rise of 2 dB or whatever you set it at. I just set it for 2 dB. So this is kind of how I usually tune the rest of my speakers. I go in and measure each speaker at the listening area. I look at the frequency response, and I do shelving filters when needed on my surround channels or even my front channels if I need them. But I go in like a surgeon, and I go and I get rid of the bass modes that are problematic at the listening area at low frequencies. And that's what this PEQ is so powerful for. So whether you're doing it for the front, left, and right channels, if they're set large, you could still manipulate the bass there. But again, you got it for your subwoofers as well. You just got to go down this list. Now, in the past, Yamaha had the ability to minimize speakers that weren't being used. I don't see that here. I'm going to ask them if there's a way to do that, or if they can update the software, because it's kind of a pain to have to go through this. If you don't have present speakers selected or used, they should probably just delete that out. But it might actually do that if you turn those channels off. I have not played with it enough yet. But here you go. You have the subwoofer channel. So your subwoofers, you only get 4 bands. The other channels, you get 7 bands. So use those bands wisely. Please find out where your problems are and do your adjustments there. And it's cool that they go, historically they stopped at like 63 hertz, and I kept bitching about it. Like, what kind of room correction can you do at bass frequencies only down to 63 hertz? Now they let you go down to 15 hertz. That's freaking awesome. Most of your modal problems are in, the 20 to 50 hertz range. So if you want to set a 20 hertz filter and you want to have a wide enough bandwidth to go meaningful correction down to, let's say, 15 or 10 hertz, you now have the ability to do that here by having this selectability. And of course, this damn impedance switch, don't ever set it to anything other than 8 ohm minimum. The 6 ohm setting will just wreak havoc on dynamics. It'll really drop the power of your receiver, as you saw in the last video. Don't use it. It's there for UL. It's there for political reasons. It's not really doing any kind of protection of your receiver. The receiver itself has plenty of nanny controls built into it. Don't need that. So yeah, this is a very powerful web interface. I hope you guys like this. In fact, I want to test something real quick. I'm going to say I'm not using subwoofer 2. I'm going to go back down and it's still there. Okay. So you see, it would have been cool if whatever speakers you have active, it'll show you the PEQ, but when those speakers are not active, either gray it out or minimize it. So maybe Yamaha will do an update on that after they see this video. That's what we're hoping for. And let's just see. So here, this is another important tab. The other tab, you could do a system reboot, backup. I highly recommend when you tweak everything and you get it the way you like it to go and back up your receiver, because you never know if you make some change in the future and things sound bad. It's always good to have the backup, and then you could restore that. And then here's where you look for firmware updates. You know, you go browse for update, please select update file. I don't have one. Actually, I checked recently and there's no, yeah, see, I'm at the latest firmware right now. But if you have a manual firmware on a USB drive, this is where you would go and basically say start and put the file in. Probably in the front panel of the receiver is a good place. So, awesome tools. I hope you guys that own these Yamaha AVENTAGE receivers take full advantage of that web editor app. That's powerful. That's usually reserved for custom integrators. This is available now to the public. As I said before, you plug an Ethernet cable in from your network into your receiver. You type in the IP address /setup, and then you get this whole assortment of adjustability, power at your fingertips through your computer. The receiver doesn't even have to be in the same room as the speakers. And you could do all this adjustability from a laptop or a PC or whatever, or a tablet. And it's just awesome. I mean, it really makes a difference. The power of being able to properly EQ your speakers, properly set the levels, the channel trims, the bass management, your HDMI routing, all that stuff makes or breaks your experience. Highly recommend you use this feature. And guys, why don't you give me some comments down below? Is anybody that has an AVENTAGE receiver in their possession right now, are you guys using this feature? Have you used it in the past? How do you like the way the new web interface looks? I think it looks great. I think it was a step in the right direction for Yamaha. So if you found this video useful, please thumb it up, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics or you want to ask questions. We're there for you. We're going to be hosting a private Patreon live stream soon, so I could spend an hour just answering everybody's questions that's a patron member, and you could be part of that if you're a patron, and we appreciate that. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.